Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora and watched the stars bend around them as the ship jumped through space faster than light. The year was 2157, and this was humanity's first mission beyond their own solar system. Jake felt proud to lead this historic journey into the unknown regions of the galaxy. The Aurora was not a big ship, but it carried the best crew Earth could send. Lisa Rodriguez worked as the chief engineer and knew every bolt and wire on the ship. Ben Williams handled all the weapons and defense systems with steady hands and sharp eyes. Amy Carter ran the communications and could speak 12 different Earth languages perfectly. 3 months into their journey, the Aurora picked up strange signals from a star system ahead. Amy worked for hours to decode the mysterious transmissions, while the rest of the crew waited with growing excitement. These were not random space noises, but clear signs of intelligent alien life. Jake ordered the ship to approach the system carefully, and Amy finally broke through the alien communication. Codes. The signals came from a massive fleet of ships, unlike anything humans had ever imagined. These vessels stretched for miles and glowed with energy that seemed to come from nowhere. The alien ships detected the Aurora immediately and sent a response that made Amy's equipment spark and smoke. Through the damaged speakers came a voice that sounded cold and metallic. The translator worked hard to convert the alien words into English. Primitive vessel, you will identify yourself and state your business in Zephyrian space. We are the masters of this sector and you have entered without permission. Jake stepped forward and activated the communication system. He spoke clearly and tried to sound peaceful. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Aurora. We come in peace from the planet Earth and wish to establish friendly contact with your people. The response came back faster than expected and carried a tone of disgust. Earth creatures, you are nothing but animals that learn to build simple machines. Your species shows no signs of true intelligence or worth. You will leave this space immediately or face destruction. Lisa checked her instruments and whispered to Jake that the alien ships were moving closer and their energy readings were off the charts. Ben prepared the Aurora's weapons but knew they were tiny compared to what they faced. Jake tried again to establish peaceful contact. We understand you are more advanced than us, but we only seek knowledge and friendship. Surely there is room in this vast galaxy for different species to coexist peacefully. The alien leader's response crushed any hope for peace. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled this region for thousands of your primitive years. We have seen countless species like yours, and they all share the same fate. You are insects pretending to be equals with gods. Without warning, the alien fleet opened fire on 2 small human research stations that had been built on nearby planets. The energy beams cut through space and turned the stations into glowing clouds of debris in seconds. The Aurora's crew watched, in horror, as their fellow humans died instantly. Consider this a demonstration of Zephyrian power, the alien voice continued. Your species has been marked for elimination. We will find your home world and cleanse it of your presence. The galaxy belongs to those worthy of it. Jake felt rage building in his chest, but forced himself to remain calm. You have just murdered innocent people who offered you no threat. This act of violence will not go unanswered. The alien leader seemed amused by Jake's words. Your threats are meaningless primitive. We have destroyed civilizations that were building cities when your ancestors were still crawling in mud. Earth will burn and your species will become nothing but a forgotten mistake. The alien fleet began forming attack formations, and Jake knew the Aurora could not fight so many powerful ships. He ordered Lisa to prepare for an emergency jump back to Earth, while Ben armed every weapon they had. Amy worked frantically to record everything about the alien technology and communications. This information would be vital for Earth's survival. The Aurora's jump drive charged slowly, while the alien ships moved closer like sharks circling wounded prey. Jake made the hardest decision of his life and ordered the retreat. The Aurora disappeared into jump space just as the alien weapons locked onto their position. During the long journey home, Jake stared at the stars and knew everything had changed forever. The crew worked in grim silence as they prepared their report for Earth. Humanity had just learned they were not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors wanted them dead. The Zephyrian Empire had declared war on Earth and called humans nothing but primitive animals. When the Aurora finally reached Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The governments of the world called emergency meetings while scientists studied the alien technology readings. Military leaders began planning for a war they knew they could not win. Jake stood before the United Earth Council and delivered his report with a heavy heart. They called us primitive and refused to see us as equals. They destroyed our people without mercy and promised to burn our world. We must prepare for the fight of our species' life. The council members looked at each other with fear and determination. Earth would have to face an enemy with technology far beyond their understanding. But humans had survived countless challenges throughout their history, and they would not give up without a fight. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked through the shipyard where hundreds of workers rushed to build Earth's defense fleet. 6 months had passed since the Aurora brought news of the Zephyrian threat, and every nation on Earth had joined together to prepare for war. The massive construction effort ran day and night as humanity raced against time. Kate had commanded Earth's space forces for 15 years, but had never faced anything like this. The enemy possessed technology that seemed like magic, compared to human weapons. Still, she refused to give up hope and pushed her people to work harder than ever before. General Paul Davis met Kate at the command center, where holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship in space. His ground forces were training for battles on planets and space stations, while Kate's fleet prepared to fight in the void between stars. Colonel Nina Hayes stood beside them, studying intelligence reports about Zephyrian tactics. Dr. Alex Chen led the weapons research team in underground laboratories, where they worked frantically to develop new technologies. His partner, Dr. Maria Santos, focused on understanding the energy shields that protected alien ships. They had made some progress, but nowhere near enough to match their enemies. Intelligence Officer Ryan Cooper and analyst Helen Burke spent their days studying the few recordings of Zephyrian communications. Every piece of information about the enemy could mean the difference between victory and extinction. The aliens seemed confident that humans would fall quickly and easily. The first major battle came when Zephyrian scouts entered the outer solar system near Pluto. Kate commanded the defense fleet from her flagship, the Defiance, while General Davis coordinated support from Mars. 20 human ships faced off against 5 alien vessels in humanity's first real space battle. Kate watched the tactical displays as her ships moved into attack formation. The human vessels carried kinetic weapons that fired metal slugs at incredible speed and nuclear missiles with enough power to destroy cities. These weapons had seemed mighty when fighting other humans, but now they would face their first real test. The Zephyrian ships moved with impossible grace as energy shields shimmered around their hulls. When the human fleet opened fire, the kinetic rounds simply bounced off the alien barriers, while the nuclear explosions were absorbed harmlessly. The enemy ships seemed untouchable. Ben Williams commanded the cruiser Sparta and led the first attack. Run. His gunners fired everything they had at the nearest alien ship, but their weapons had no effect. The Zephyrian vessel responded with beams of pure energy that cut through the Sparta's armor like paper. The human ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Ben and his entire crew died in seconds without even scratching their target. Kate felt sick as she watched good people die while their enemy remained unharmed. The battle continued for 3 hours and became a slaughter. Human ships tried every tactic they knew, but nothing worked against the alien shields. The Zephyrians moved slowly and casually as if they were swatting flies rather than fighting a real battle. Captain Lucas Thompson commanded the destroyer Warrior. and tried to ram one of the alien ships in a desperate suicide attack. The enemy vessel simply moved aside at the last second and destroyed the warrior with a single energy beam. Lucas died believing his sacrifice was worthless. Kate ordered the retreat when only 6 human ships remained operational. The alien fleet had lost nothing while humanity's first defense line lay in ruins. The survivors limped back to Mars while the Zephyrians sent mocking messages calling them pathetic insects. Dr. Chen watched the battle recordings with growing despair as his weapons proved useless against alien technology. His team had spent months developing new armor and shields, but they were centuries behind their enemies. Maria Santos studied the energy readings and realized human science barely understood how the alien systems worked. The second battle came near Jupiter when a larger Zephyrian force arrived to finish what the scouts had started. Admiral Sullivan commanded 40 ships this time and hoped that greater numbers might make a difference. She was wrong. The alien fleet moved through the human formation like sharks through a school of fish. Energy beams lanced out in perfect coordination as the Zephyrians destroyed ship after ship without taking any damage in return. Kate watched helplessly as her people died trying to defend their home world. Captain Amy Carter now commanded the communications ship Mercury and tried to jam the alien targeting systems. Her electronic warfare had no effect on technology she could not understand. The Zephyrians seemed amused by her efforts and destroyed her ship while broadcasting laughter. General Davis sent his best pilots and fighter craft to attack the alien vessels directly. The small ships tried to use speed and numbers to overwhelm the enemy shields, but the Zephyrian point defense systems shot them down like clay targets. Not one fighter managed to cause any damage. Ryan Cooper analyzed the battle data and found patterns in the alien movements, but nothing that could help human forces win. The Zephyrians fought with mathematical precision and never made mistakes. They treated the war like an extermination rather than a real conflict. After losing 30 ships in the Jupiter battle, Kate pulled her remaining forces back to Earth's orbit. The alien fleet followed slowly and began broadcasting messages to the planet below. The Zephyrian commander called humans a primitive species that would soon be forgotten. Helen Burke translated the alien taunts for the world leaders who gathered in emergency session. The enemy offered no terms for surrender and promised only death for every human in the galaxy. They spoke of humanity like farmers discussing pest control. Dr. Chen stood before the United Earth Council and admitted that conventional weapons could not penetrate alien defenses. His research team needed time to develop new approaches, but the enemy fleet was already approaching Earth. The planet had perhaps weeks before the final assault began. Kate looked at the tactical displays showing red dots that represented alien ships and felt the weight of humanity's fate on her shoulders. Her fleet was broken and her weapons were useless, but she would not give up. Somewhere in the vast complexity of war, there had to be a way to fight back. General Davis began preparing ground defenses while Colonel Hayes organized civilian evacuations. They all knew the odds were impossible, but humans had faced extinction before and survived. This time would have to be different, but they would find a way or die trying. Captain Lucas Thompson sat in the underground bunker where Earth's military leaders met in secret. He had survived the Jupiter battle when his ship was damaged, but not destroyed, and now he brought new ideas to the desperate fight for survival. The conventional war was lost, but Lucas believed humanity could still win if they stopped trying to fight like their enemies. Admiral Kate Sullivan listened as Lucas explained his plan to use guerrilla tactics in space. Instead of big fleet battles, humans could strike fast and disappear before the aliens could respond. Small groups of ships could attack supply lines and isolated targets while avoiding the main enemy forces. Lucas had learned these tactics during Special Forces training on Earth, where small teams often defeated much larger armies. The key was to never fight fair and always hit the enemy where they were weak. The Zephyrians expected humans to keep making the same mistakes, and Lucas wanted to surprise them. Engineer Stephanie Lee worked in the research labs with Dr. Alex Chen to develop new tools for this different kind of war. They created stealth pods that were too small for alien sensors to detect easily. These tiny ships could carry just 1 or 2 people, but they could slip past enemy defenses like ghosts. Dr. Chen had discovered something important about alien technology while studying the battle recordings. The Zephyrians used energy systems that were incredibly powerful but also very complex. Human science was simpler, but that might actually be an advantage in some situations. Programmer Daniel Kim and systems analyst Rachel Foster worked together to understand how alien computers operated. They found that Zephyrian systems were built for efficiency and power, but not for dealing with unexpected problems. The aliens had become so advanced that they had forgotten how to be flexible. Dr. Maria Santos made the biggest breakthrough when she realized that human knowledge of quantum mechanics was actually ahead of alien science in some ways. The Zephyrians had focused on energy manipulation, while humans had studied the fundamental nature of space and time itself. Working with Chen's team, Santos developed disruptor fields that could interfere with alien shield generators. The devices were crude and only worked for short periods, but they could create windows of opportunity for human weapons. For the first time since the war began, humans had found a way to hurt their enemies. Psychologist Dr. Jennifer Walsh studied intercepted alien communications and discovered crucial information about Zephyrian society. The aliens had a rigid hierarchy, where lower ranks never questioned orders from above. This system made them efficient but also predictable and inflexible. Walsh realized that Zephyrian commanders thought in patterns that humans could learn to exploit. The aliens always followed proper procedures and never took risks or improvised. Solutions. Their advanced technology had made them conservative and afraid of change. The first test of the new tactics came when Lucas led a small strike team against a Zephyrian supply convoy near Saturn. His force consisted of just 3 stealth pods carrying disruptor devices and small nuclear charges. The mission seemed impossible, but Lucas was confident in his plan. Pilot Sarah Johnson flew the lead pod and approached the alien ships from an angle the enemy sensors could not cover. The Zephyrian convoy moved in perfect formation without any scouts or irregular patrols. They followed their standard procedures exactly as Walsh had predicted. Lucas activated the disruptor field just as the human pods reached attack range. The alien shields flickered and failed for 30 seconds while the convoy commanders tried to understand what was happening. In those precious moments, the human nuclear charges found their targets. 2 Zephyrian supply ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light while the third was severely damaged. The alien escort vessels spun in confusion as they searched for attackers they could not find. Lucas and his team escaped in the chaos while the enemy called for reinforcements that arrived too late. The successful attack sent shockwaves through both fleets as word spread of humanity's first victory. The aliens had lost ships and supplies, while humans had suffered no casualties. More importantly, the Zephyrians had learned that their enemies could strike without warning. Admiral Sullivan authorized more guerrilla missions as Stephanie Lee produced additional stealth pods and disruptor devices. The human fleet began reorganizing into small, independent groups that could operate without central command. This was exactly the opposite of how the aliens fought. Captain Amy Carter led the second major strike against a Zephyrian communication station orbiting Neptune. Her team used the same hit-and-run tactics, but added electronic warfare to confuse the enemy response. The aliens tried to follow their procedures but found that humans did not fight according to any rules they understood. Dr. Chen and Dr. Santos worked around the clock to improve the disruptor technology, while Daniel Kim found ways to hack into alien computer networks. The Zephyrians had never faced enemies who could interfere with their systems, and they struggled to adapt their defenses. Lucas trained more strike teams as the guerrilla war expanded throughout the solar system. Each mission taught humans something new about alien weaknesses, while the enemy became increasingly frustrated. The Zephyrian High Command could not understand how a primitive species was causing so much trouble. Intelligence Officer Ryan Cooper and analyst Helen Burke noticed changes in alien communications that showed growing concern among Zephyrian leaders. The enemy had expected a quick victory, but instead faced a war that grew more difficult every day. Some alien commanders began questioning their initial assessment of human capabilities. The guerrilla campaign reached its peak when Sarah Johnson led a daring raid on a major Zephyrian base on one of Jupiter's moons. Her team destroyed fuel depots and weapons storage while alien guards stood helplessly as their shields failed. The base commander was captured alive and became the first alien prisoner of war. Dr. Walsh interrogated the prisoner and learned that Zephyrian society was beginning to fracture under the stress of unexpected resistance. Other primitive species throughout the galaxy were watching the human war, and some had begun their own rebellions. The mighty empire was facing challenges on multiple fronts. Kate Sullivan realized that the balance of the war was shifting as alien morale declined while human confidence grew. The Zephyrians still had superior technology, but they no longer seemed invincible. More importantly, humans had learned to fight in ways their enemies could not predict or counter. Lucas Thompson stood on the bridge of his new command ship and watched as another successful strike team returned from their mission. The aliens had called humans primitive, and perhaps they were right in some ways. But primitive could also mean flexible and unpredictable, and that was becoming humanity's greatest weapon. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years by following the same successful patterns. Now they faced enemies who refused to follow those patterns, and their ancient system was beginning to crack. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humans believed they could actually win. Commander Eric Stone watched as his disguised fleet drifted through the asteroid belt, pretending to be nothing more than space debris. His ships were converted civilian vessels that looked broken and abandoned, but carried powerful weapons hidden inside their damaged hulls. The Zephyrians had learned to watch for stealth pods, but they still ignored what appeared to be harmless wreckage. The alien patrol passed within a few thousand meters of Eric's position, without detecting the hidden human ships. The Zephyrian commander followed standard procedures and scanned only for active threats while ignoring anything that seemed dead or worthless. This blind spot in their thinking had become a major weakness that humans exploited ruthlessly. Communications expert Tracy Miller sat in the command center of the space station Liberty, where she worked to hack into Zephyrian networks. The aliens used quantum encryption that seemed impossible to break, but Tracy had discovered that their overconfidence made them careless. They often transmitted sensitive information without proper security because they believed no primitive species could intercept it. Tracy's breakthrough came when she realized that Zephyrian computers operated on logical principles that were completely predictable. The aliens built their systems to be efficient and reliable, but never considered that enemies might think differently than they did. Human intuition and creativity allowed Tracy to find gaps in alien logic. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the rebuilt Aurora and led a wolfpack of human ships that hunted Zephyrian convoys throughout the outer system. His tactics were based on old submarine warfare, where stealth and surprise mattered more than firepower. The aliens expected their enemies to announce themselves and fight honorably, but Jake had no interest in being honorable. The Aurora's crew had learned to think like pirates rather than regular military forces. They struck without warning and disappeared before the enemy could organize a response. Lisa Rodriguez had modified their engines to run silent, while Ben Williams developed new weapons that left no energy signatures for aliens to track. Dr. Maria Santos made another breakthrough in her laboratory when she created quantum mines that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. These weapons were invisible to normal sensors because they were only partially present in regular space. The Zephyrians had no defense against threats they could not detect or understand. Engineer Kevin Walsh worked with Santos to deploy the quantum mines along major shipping routes where alien supply convoys traveled. The mines would activate only when Zephyrian ships passed nearby, and the explosions came from directions that seemed impossible. Entire enemy fleets were destroyed by weapons that appeared to materialize from nowhere. High Commander Vex Thera of the Zephyrian Empire studied reports of mounting losses with growing frustration. Her forces still possessed overwhelming technological superiority, but somehow a primitive species was causing devastating damage. The humans fought without honor or proper tactics and refused to follow the accepted rules of civilized warfare. Vexithera ordered her fleet commanders to abandon standard procedures and adapt to human tactics, but the rigid Zephyrian military system could not change quickly. Officers who had spent centuries following the same successful patterns found it impossible to think in new ways. Their advanced education and training had become a limitation rather than an advantage. Field Commander Tony Rodriguez led human ground forces on Europa, where Zephyrian troops had established a forward base. The aliens had energy weapons and powered armor that should have made them invincible, but they fought like they were on parade instead of adapting to the rough terrain and guerrilla tactics. Tony's soldiers used the ice caves and geysers of Europa to launch ambush attacks that the aliens never saw coming. The Zephyrians would form perfect battle lines and advance across open ground while humans struck from hidden positions and melted away before the enemy could respond. The alien base fell after a week of fighting that cost them hundreds of troops. Dr. Alex Chen collaborated with physicist Gary Phillips to develop mirror drives that used Zephyrian energy signatures as fuel for human ships. These revolutionary engines could absorb alien weapon strikes and convert them into power for human systems. The harder the enemies shot at human vessels, the faster and stronger they became. Tactical analyst Emma Watson discovered that Zephyrian fleet movements followed mathematical patterns that could be predicted days in advance. The aliens were so organized and efficient that their own precision betrayed them. Emma could tell human commanders exactly where enemy ships would be and when they would arrive. Captain Lucas Thompson planned the most daring mission of the war when he decided to capture a Zephyrian command ship intact. The aliens had never lost a major vessel to primitive enemies and believed their security was perfect. Lucas intended to prove them wrong and steal their most valuable secrets. Thompson's strike team approached the command ship disguised as a damaged Zephyrian patrol that was requesting emergency assistance. Communications specialist Julie Adams had learned to mimic alien transmissions perfectly, and the enemy fell for the deception completely. The Zephyrians followed their rescue procedures without question and allowed the human ships to dock. The boarding action lasted only minutes as human soldiers poured through the alien ship's corridors. The Zephyrian crew had trained for many situations, but never for enemies who appeared on their own bridge without warning. Lucas personally captured the ship's commander, while his team secured vital intelligence databases. The captured command ship yielded treasure beyond imagination, as human scientists studied advanced alien technology for the first time. More importantly, the intelligence gathered by Julie Adams revealed that the Zephyrian Empire was facing rebellions on dozens of worlds. Other primitive species had been inspired by human resistance and begun their own wars of independence. Admiral Kate Sullivan received reports that showed the strategic situation changing rapidly across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but now that fear was breaking down. Species that had submitted for centuries were rising up as they realized the mighty empire could be defeated. The tide of war turned decisively when Sullivan's fleet attacked the main Zephyrian base near Mars, using combined human and captured alien technology. The human ships moved with alien speed while their quantum mines created chaos in enemy formations. Mirror drives allowed damaged vessels to absorb punishment and keep fighting. The battle for Mars lasted 3 days and ended with complete human victory as the Zephyrian fleet retreated in disorder. For the first time since the war began, an alien commander requested terms for surrender instead of fighting to the death. The mighty empire was learning that humans could not be dismissed as harmless primitives. Eric Stone watched the retreating alien ships and realized that everything had changed. Humanity had entered the war as the underdog facing impossible odds, but now they were winning through sheer determination and creative thinking. The Zephyrians still had more ships and better technology, but they were beginning to fear their primitive enemies. Tracy Miller intercepted communications between Zephyrian commanders that revealed panic spreading through their ranks. The aliens could not understand how a species they considered inferior was defeating them at every turn. Their rigid military doctrine had no answers for enemies who refused to fight according to established rules. The war was entering a new phase where humans held the initiative, and the aliens struggled to respond. The Zephyrian Empire's greatest weakness was that they had become too successful and comfortable with their superiority. Now they faced enemies who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Field Commander Tony Rodriguez crawled through the ventilation shafts of the Zephyrian fortress on Titan as his guerrilla forces prepared for the final assault. The alien stronghold had seemed impregnable with its energy shields and automated defenses. But Tony had learned that advanced technology meant nothing if the people using it could not adapt to unexpected situations. His soldiers had spent weeks studying the fortress and found dozens of weaknesses that the Zephyrian engineers never considered. The aliens built their defenses to stop direct attacks by enemy fleets, but never imagined that primitive humans would crawl through maintenance tunnels and disable systems from the inside. Tony emerged from the shaft behind a group of alien technicians who were monitoring their perfect security screens. The Zephyrians died without ever knowing they were under attack as human soldiers struck simultaneously throughout the fortress. Within minutes, the most secure alien base in the solar system had fallen to enemies the defenders considered barely intelligent. Dr. Stephanie Lee worked in her laboratory aboard the space station Prometheus, where she perfected the mirror drive technology that had revolutionized human warfare. The new engines could absorb any form of energy and convert it into power for human ships. Zephyrian weapons that should have destroyed human vessels instead made them faster and stronger. Lee collaborated with physicist Gary Phillips to create hybrid ships that combined the best of human creativity with captured alien technology. These vessels could appear anywhere in a star system instantly, while their quantum armor made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting enemies who seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Tactical. Analyst Emma Watson sat in the Intelligence Center, where holographic displays showed the positions of every known alien ship in the galaxy. Her mathematical models could predict Zephyrian fleet movements with perfect accuracy because the aliens never deviated from their established patterns. Emma had become the most valuable weapon in humanity's arsenal. Emma's predictions allowed human commanders to set traps that the aliens walked into blindly. Zephyrian fleets would arrive at strategic locations only to find human forces waiting in perfect ambush positions. The Empire's rigid military doctrine had become a fatal weakness that humans exploited ruthlessly. Captain Jake Morrison led his wolf pack through the Zephyrian home system, where alien ships fled at the first sign of human presence. The mighty empire that had once called humans primitive insects now feared to engage them in direct combat. Morrison's reputation had spread throughout alien space as a hunter who never lost his prey. The Aurora and her sister ships moved through the enemy fleet like sharks among fish. Morrison had perfected the art of hit-and-run warfare until his tactics seemed supernatural to alien observers. Zephyrian commanders issued standing orders to avoid human ships whenever possible because fighting them was considered suicide. Communications. Specialist Tracy Miller had become so skilled at hacking alien networks that she could control Zephyrian ships remotely. The aliens had never imagined that primitive humans could understand their technology well enough to turn it against them. Tracy could disable entire fleets with a few keystrokes, while sitting safely aboard her command ship. The psychological impact of human success was spreading throughout the galaxy as other oppressed species learned that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated. Rebellions erupted on hundreds of worlds as alien subject peoples rose up against their overlords. The Empire faced enemies on every front while their military forces crumbled under constant pressure. High Commander Vex Thara stood in her command center and watched red indicators spread across the tactical display like a plague. Each red light represented another lost battle or failed mission as human forces carved up her empire piece by piece. The species she had dismissed as primitive animals was destroying everything she had spent her life building. Vex Thara had ordered her best commanders to study human tactics and develop countermeasures, but the results were always the same. Zephyrian forces could not adapt to enemies who fought without rules or honor. Every time the aliens thought they understood human strategy, the primitives would do something completely unexpected. Captain Lucas Thompson led the assault on the Zephyrian fleet yards orbiting their capital world. The mission seemed impossible, even by human standards, but Thompson had learned that the word impossible meant nothing when fighting for survival. His strike force consisted of just 50 ships against 1,000 alien defenders. The battle began when human quantum mines materialized inside the alien formations without warning. Zephyrian ships exploded by the dozens as weapons they could not detect tore through their perfect defenses. Thompson's vessels appeared from multiple directions simultaneously as their mirror drives bent space and time around them. The alien fleet tried to respond using standard tactics, but found themselves fighting enemies who seemed to be everywhere at once. Human ships would vanish, just as Zephyrian weapons locked onto them and reappear behind the firing vessels. The laws of physics seemed to favor the primitives, while advanced alien technology failed repeatedly. Engineer Kevin Walsh had developed temporal displacement fields that allowed human ships to exist slightly outside normal time. The aliens could see human vessels, but their weapons always fired at where the enemy ships had been, rather than where they actually were. This technology made human forces nearly impossible to hit in combat. Dr. Alex Chen watched the battle from Earth and marveled at how far human science had advanced in just 2 years of total war. The desperate fight for survival had forced humanity to evolve at an incredible pace, while their enemies remained trapped in ancient patterns. The primitives had become more advanced than their teachers. The tide of the battle turned when Thompson's forces captured the main Zephyrian shipyard and began using alien manufacturing equipment to build human vessels. The irony was perfect, as primitive technology was produced in the most advanced factories in the galaxy. The aliens found themselves facing improved versions of their own weapons. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the final phase of the assault, as human forces surrounded the Zephyrian capital world. The planet that had ruled a galactic empire for millennia now faced invasion by the species it had tried to exterminate. The roles had reversed completely as the hunters became the hunted. Sullivan's fleet included ships from dozens of rebel species that had joined the human cause after witnessing their success against the Empire. The galaxy was rising up against Zephyrian rule, as primitive peoples everywhere demanded freedom. What had started as genocide had become a war of liberation. The Zephyrian High Council met in emergency session as reports arrived of defeats throughout their territory. The Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible as human tactics spread to other rebel groups. The primitives had not just won their own war, but had taught the galaxy how to fight back. Field Commander Tony Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his captured Zephyrian dreadnought and watched alien civilians evacuate their cities below. The humans had won, but Tony felt no joy in the victory. Too many good people had died because the aliens could not accept that different did not mean inferior. The war was ending, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven that creativity and determination could overcome any technological advantage. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over and a new era of freedom and cooperation was beginning. The primitives had changed everything by refusing to accept their place as victims. General Paul Davis stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Earth as the final battle of the war began near Jupiter. Every branch of human military and civilian expertise had come together for this massive operation that would either end the conflict or doom humanity forever. The stakes could not be higher as both species fought for their very survival. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled as hundreds of ships moved into position around the gas giant. His vessels included captured Zephyrian technology, hybrid human designs, and completely new weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The Aurora led the formation just as she had during first contact years earlier. Colonel Nathan Brooks coordinated ground forces that had landed on Jupiter's moons to secure key installations before the space battle began. His soldiers used terrain and guerrilla tactics that the Zephyrian defenders could not counter. The aliens still fought like they were on parade while humans struck from unexpected directions. Dr. Alex Chen watched from his laboratory as the weapons his team had developed, prepared to change warfare forever. The quantum jump drive technology that had brought humans to the stars was about to become the ultimate weapon. Ships could now appear anywhere in a star system, instantly making traditional defensive strategies completely obsolete. Engineer Lisa Rodriguez managed the complex logistics of the operation from the command ship Defiance, as thousands of vessels coordinated their movements. The human fleet operated like a living organism, with each part supporting the others, while alien forces remained trapped in rigid formations. Flexibility had become humanity's greatest advantage. High Commander Vexithara led the final Zephyrian armada in a desperate attempt to save her crumbling empire. Her fleet was still larger and more powerful than the human forces, but she no longer felt confident of victory. The primitives had proven again and again that superior technology meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. The battle began when Morrison's ships appeared throughout the Zephyrian formation without warning. The quantum jump drives allowed human vessels to materialize inside enemy defensive perimeters, while alien commanders struggled to understand what was happening. Traditional fleet tactics became meaningless when enemies could strike from any direction. Vexithara watched in horror as her perfect battle lines collapsed into chaos. Human ships vanished just as her weapons achieved target lock and reappeared behind her firing vessels. The primitives had learned to weaponize their own transportation technology in ways that seemed impossible. Captain Amy Carter led a squadron of stealth ships that appeared inside the alien flagship's bridge while Vexithara was still giving orders. The Zephyrian commander found herself surrounded by enemies who had somehow bypassed every security system. The most advanced warship in the galaxy had been invaded by primitives who should not have been able to leave their own planet. Dr. Maria Santos watched from Earth as her quantum weapons tore through Zephyrian defenses like they were made of paper. The aliens had spent millennia perfecting energy shields that could stop any conventional attack, but human science had learned to bypass those defenses entirely. The primitives were using the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Vexithara looked around her captured bridge and finally understood the magnitude of her failure. She had dismissed humanity as inferior because they lacked advanced technology, but now she realized that advancement meant nothing without the ability to grow and change. The Zephyrians had become prisoners of their own success. The alien commander spoke slowly as translator devices converted her words into human languages. I have spent my entire life believing that technology determined superiority. I thought your species was primitive because your weapons were simple and your tactics were crude. I was wrong about everything. Morrison listened as Vexithara continued, her confession while explosions lit up space around them. The battle was ending as Zephyrian resistance collapsed throughout the system. The mighty empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was surrendering to enemies they had tried to exterminate. We called you primitive, but that was our weakness, not yours, Vexithara said. Your lack of advanced technology forced You to think in ways we had forgotten. We became so dependent on our machines that we stopped being creative. You remained flexible while we became rigid. Colonel Brooks reported that all Zephyrian ground installations had surrendered as alien. Forces laid down their weapons. The enemy soldiers seemed relieved that the fighting was over. Many had begun to question their empire's goals as the war dragged on and their losses mounted. Admiral Kate Sullivan accepted the formal surrender of the Zephyrian fleet as representatives. From both species worked to establish peace terms. The aliens offered humanity full membership in the Galactic Council with equal rights and representation. Other species throughout the galaxy had already requested trade agreements and military alliances. Dr. Chen stood before the United Earth Council and delivered his final report on the war that had changed everything. Humanity had not just survived, but had emerged as a major galactic power. The species that aliens had called primitive now led a coalition of free worlds that stretched across the stars. Tracy Miller intercepted communications from dozens of alien civilizations that wanted to learn human tactics and technology. The galaxy had watched humanity defeat a seemingly invincible empire, and everyone wanted to understand how it was possible. The primitives had become teachers for advanced civilizations. Lucas Thompson reflected on the journey that had brought humanity from the edge of extinction to galactic leadership. The key had been refusing to accept limitations or fight according to rules that favored their enemies. Humans had won by being themselves rather than trying to become something else. The peace negotiations revealed that the Zephyrian Empire had been slowly decaying for centuries as their rigid society stifled innovation and creativity. The war with humanity had simply exposed weaknesses that were already present. Other subject species had been waiting for someone to show them that rebellion was possible. Emma Watson analyzed the strategic situation and realized that the galaxy was entering a new age of cooperation and freedom. The old empires built on domination and fear were crumbling as smaller civilizations learned to work together. Humanity had started a revolution that would reshape the entire galaxy. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora and watched as alien ships began displaying human friendship symbols alongside their own. The species that had come to destroy Earth were now asking to learn from their former enemies. The primitives had gained the respect of the entire galaxy through their refusal to give up. Vexithara met with human leaders to discuss the future of her people in a galaxy where the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed. She admitted that humanity had taught her species valuable lessons about adaptation and humility. The former enemies began working together to build a better future for all civilizations. The war officially ended when representatives from hundreds of worlds signed the Jupiter Accords, establishing a new galactic government based on equality and mutual respect. Humanity took its place as a founding member of the free galaxy, while former empires became just another voice among many. Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of his ship and remembered the first day he had encountered alien life. The Zephyrians had called humans primitive, and perhaps they were right in some ways. But being primitive had meant being adaptable, and that had made all the difference. The final entry in the war records captured the essence of humanity's victory with simple words that would be remembered forever. They had called humans primitive, right up until the moment humanity changed the very nature of war itself. The galaxy would never underestimate the power of determination and creativity again.